So let's talk about the Prophet's last moments. Some narrations narrated by narrators say that he was in Aisha's house and died in Aisha's arm. This hadith or these ahadith were only narrated by Aisha and not by other wives or companions. But the hadith of Ibn Abbas is something else. Let me read the English translation of the narration from Al-Tabaqat al-Kubra by Ibn Sa'd, that is a famous book of Ahlul Sunnah. Ibn Abbas said, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away while his head was in the lap of Ali ibn Abi Talib. Narrator says, I said, but Urwa narrates to me from Aisha, who said, he passed away in my lap. Ibn Abbas replied, do you know what she means? She only means that he did not pass away while in anyone's lap, means Ali's lap, but rather he was leaning against her chest. Then he continued, and it was Ali who undertook his washing or ghusl, and I thought to myself that I should not wash the Messenger of Allah, but if he had truly passed away in her lap, then no one other than her would have undertaken it. So as Ali washed the body, undertook his ghusl, so it means that he was with Ali in his last moments. Narration emphasizes that Imam Ali alayhi salam was not only present during the Prophet's final moments, but was also the one who performed his funeral rites, including washing and shrouding his blessed body. So here Ibn Abbas strongly rejects the story of the government or the narrations of the government. In the narrations narrated by Ahlul Bayt, the Prophet was with Ali and Fatima in his final moments. Let me read narration of Salama, the wife of the Prophet. Salama said, by the one in whose name I swear, Ali was the closest person to the Messenger of Allah in terms of covenant. We visited the Messenger of Allah in the house where he passed away. He was resting against Ali's chest when he departed. Ali leaned over him and whispered to him. Later, Ali was asked what the Prophet had told him. He replied, he taught me 1,000 doors of knowledge, and from each door 1,000 more doors were opened. So this narration is reported in Al-Mustadrak Sahihain, that is a famous book and authentic, and Tabaqat Kubra by Ibn Sa'd, and even in Shia books like Bihar al-Anwar and Al-Kafi. Abdullah ibn Umar narrated, when the Messenger of Allah was in his final illness, he said, call my brother for me. So Abu Bakr was called, but the Prophet turned away from him. Then he said again, call my brother for me. So Umar was called, but the Prophet turned away from him as well. Then he said, call my brother for me. So Ali was called, and the Prophet covered him with his cloak and leaned close to him, speaking to him. When Ali left, later, he was asked, what did the Prophet say to you? He replied, he taught me 1,000 doors of knowledge, and from each door 1,000 more doors were opened for me. And here even it's strange that they didn't know who is the brother of the Prophet, and they didn't want to call Ali. Anyway, this hadith is even in Sunni books like Al-Mustadrak, and even in Shia books like Bihar al-Anwar. Okay, what happened after the Prophet's death? After the Prophet's death or demise, while Abu Bakr was outside Medina, Omar first said that the Prophet had not died and had gone to heaven, and that he would cut off the head of anyone who said otherwise. So if you say something else, if you say the Prophet is dead, I will kill you. After Abu Bakr returned, he delivered a sermon in the mosque and announced the news of the Prophet's death, and Omar was convinced. So he solved the problem. But it's strange that Omar, who had said a few days earlier in Thursday that the Prophet would say delusion, inna ar-rajula la yahjur, now refused to accept his death. Some days ago we said that no, the Prophet is wrong, we can say, as an ordinary human, but now he refuses to accept his death. Anyway, and then he is quickly convinced by Abu Bakr's statement. It's like he was waiting for Abu Bakr to come and say, no, he is dead, and okay, he accepts. After the Prophet's death, while Ali and some of the Prophet's cousins were bathing and shrouding him, some of the companions gathered in the Saqifa to appoint his successor. And the strange thing is that Abu Bakr and Umar, who are introduced in history as, and according to ahadith written by the government, as close friends and companions of the Prophet, were among these people. If the matter of the caliphate was more important than the shrouding and the burial of the best servant of Allah, the messenger of Allah, and if delayed it would cause sedition, then why didn't the Prophet himself pay attention to it? It's a question, because we may say, no, they did it because it was important, it was a danger, so why the Prophet himself didn't think about it? Even more strange is that, according to some historical accounts, none of these people were present at the Prophet's burial ceremony. Okay, let's talk about the Prophet's burial place or his grave. It is well known that the Prophet was buried in Aisha's house. However, this is not consistent with some historical accounts. For example, according to historical accounts, the house or room where the Prophet was buried had two doors, and they entered through one door and exited through another, while the house of the Prophet's wives had only one door. So some scholars believe that the Prophet was buried in his room next to the mosque, not in the room or house of Aisha. What happened in the attic or Saqifa? Let's see Umar's narration. The narration about Saqifa, as recorded in Sahih Bukhari, is mainly found in Hadith 6830, Book of Expedition, and is reported by Umar ibn al-Khattab. Okay, Umar says, meanwhile, news reached us that the Ansar had gathered at Saqifa Banu Sa'ida to appoint a leader. Abu Bakr, Abu Ubaidah, and I rushed there. Upon arrival, we found Sa'd ibn Ubaidah sitting among the Ansar who were discussing leadership. The Ansar argued that they had sheltered and supported the Prophet ﷺ, so the leadership should be theirs. Some of them even suggested, let there be one leader from us and one from you, means Muhajirin, who came from Mecca. I wanted to speak, but Abu Bakr stopped me. He addressed them saying, the Quraysh are the most deserving of leadership, as they are from the tribe of the Prophet and were the first to embrace Islam. Then Abu Bakr proposed, I offer you one of these two men, Umar or Abu Ubaidah. Give your pledge to either of them. At this moment, I immediately took Abu Bakr's hand and said, no, we will pledge allegiance to you, for you are the best among us and the most beloved to the Prophet. Then Abu Ubaidah also gave his pledge. Following this, most of the Muhajirin and many of the Ansar accepted Abu Bakr as the Caliph, but Sa'd ibn Ubaidah and some of his followers from Khazraj, a part of Ansar, refused, but we insisted on unity to avoid division. This is the narration of Umar about what happened in Saqifa. Reports indicate that there was a conflict in Saqifa between the Muhajirin and the Ansar over the caliphate, and in the end they elected caliph without consulting the Ahlul Bayt and Banu Hashim. The question is whether this choice, which was made by a small number of Muslims and has no trace in the Quran or Sunnah, is legitimate. And if his election is not legitimate, the caliphate of the subsequent caliphs is also not legitimate. It's an important question. Sa'd ibn Ubadah never pledged allegiance to Abu Bakr and was eventually found murdered in his home during Umar's caliphate. This is about Sa'd ibn Ubadah, the leader of Ansar, who didn't accept the caliphate of Abu Bakr. After Abu Bakr was elected, the tribe of Bani Salim came to Medina from outside Medina and pledged allegiance to Abu Bakr, did bay'ah to Abu Bakr, and then other people pledged allegiance, some of whom pledged allegiance reluctantly. After that, it was time to take allegiance from the main opponents, the Banu Hashim, who led by Ali ibn Abi Talib.